This week on Life in Motion, we are getting kind of sentimental and pretty deep.
One of us is.
Yeah. Well, me.
Okay, I got
me.
a little sentimental too, but you definitely got a little sentimental.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about seasons of life. We're going to talk about finding purpose as you age and change. I think, Heather, this is a great episode for some of our listeners that listen and then text their family and like ping back and forth, like a book club kind of. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about.
You know what? That's a great idea. I think that if you listen to this episode and you are like, I feel stuck, or I'm not sure about this, or don't know about this. This is a great episode to send to your friends to listen to and then say, I'd love to talk about this.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it because we believe in doing life together. So take a listen, share it with somebody, and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
You know, I've just been thinking about the seasons of life and it's because it's my birthday.
Your birthday's over, hun.
My birthday's over, but I'm going to be probably celebrating my birthday
fine.
for a while. But I'm still meditating on my birthday.
Okay,
and
good.
The meaning of turning 50.
The meaning of life. Let's talk about the meaning of life this week. Go ahead.
But
no, I'm serious.
But the seasons are so interesting. I mean, last time we talked on this podcast, we were talking about what would we say to our 20-year-old selves, and I just have been thinking about how different and how much happens in a decade, and even in our families and in ourselves. And
how much happens in less time than that? Because I think just before our podcast officially launched, you and I, it was 2020, we were holed up in our houses.
Yeah.
And you and I would do afternoon coffee talks on Facebook.
Yeah,
I don't know if we did them on Instagram or not.
we did. Yeah.
Okay. We did afternoon coffee talks at 2:00. Anybody that wanted to could tune in and watch us just talk to each other over social media because life was boring.
Yes.
Because everyone was stuck in their houses. And we would just talk. I remember one episode I had filters on because I just learned how to do filters, like look like a puppy dog.
Yeah.
But we just started talking about like what was really going on, the emotional, like what it felt like to be on lockdown.
Living every single day, every single minute with all of the people in your house.
Yes. Like, you know, people doing like go in your driveway and do an exercise. Like anyway.
Not me.
But that we'd already been talking about starting a podcast, but that was where the powers that be realized we're really good.
Yeah.
We are really good at this.
We got some good reps in.
We can talk over each other and sometimes pause and let the other person talk, and we can banter, and we're really good at this. And our podcast, although it had already been in the works, it officially launched in that season. And our first episode was us talking about porn.
That's right.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Just get right into it.
Just like, you know what, we're going to start a podcast. Let's talk about porn. Just so funny now because now we kind of just talk about whatever's happening in our lives. But that was happening in our lives because we had adolescent boys, raising adolescent boys. And I just was at lunch yesterday with someone whose son is dealing with some porn stuff. And I was like, well, he doesn't have to be embarrassed. That's pretty much everyone's story.
Yeah.
He does need to find someone to walk with him if he wants to walk out of this. But it's everyone's story right now, boys and girls alike. But anyway, that's where we decided we were gonna teach the world some things. We're gonna help people learn.
You know, this is just kind of changing the subject on you, but
Okay.
When you're in different seasons, it seems like that it's going to be that way forever.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you can feel stuck there, or that just like, when is this going to end? There's no way out.
Yeah.
And you look back on your life and it really can change so quickly.
Yeah.
That different things can happen, whether, Whit referenced this in a message recently, like marriage, going through good seasons and bad seasons. And part of being menopausal is marriage going through a rougher season. And you're just like, this is not fun right now.
Yeah.
And realizing it's probably mostly my fault. But, you're just like, how long is this going to be not fun?
Yeah.
And how do you get yourself out of what's not fun?
Yeah.
And how do you get back to the good parts? And just
how do you?
Realizing what's not fun, what's causing the not fun, and what you can do differently to get out of it. So just for instance, I think I don't want to blame hormones, but I do think part of the not fun in our marriage, which it wasn't bad necessarily, it's just in a low place, is, my hormones. I'm irritated about everything.
Yeah.
And so Whit talks too loud. He coughs too much. He's, he eats really loud, or whatever. It's like all these things, they're just annoying. And I trying to figure out, how do I not be annoyed? And for me, I can't change him, and I can tell him that, but then it turns into griping. So how do I change me and fix what do I need to do? How do I need to fix the situation? So addressing the physical, making sure I'm getting enough sleep, trying to figure out all these things out of what's causing my irritability. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating the right foods? Do I have purpose? That's one thing that I've realized over the last few months, that when I turned 40, did I talk about this last week?
Go ahead, even if you did.
When I turned 40, I had a baby and other children all the way up to 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And that was a completely different stage of life than I'm in right now.
Yeah.
And I've realized that this is coming and this is happening. My kids, they just don't need you the same way.
Sure.
It's different. My oldest daughter is working, and so I really like to talk to her for a few minutes in the morning before she goes to work. And
oh my goodness, I hope that makes the podcast. You itching your armpit.
I can't stop touching.
Just so you know, you're kind of scaring me. Not that you're a scary person, but I've had enough emotional highs and lows with mental health issues that I don't need to go through menopause. I'm telling the Lord, I need a pass on this one.
Yeah.
I need this to just pass over. Passover. I'm gonna put this stuff on the doorpost and go, you know what? Just one day, it's fine if I don't ever have a period again, but I'm not doing any of the other stuff. We're not doing this.
Okay, good for you.
Right now, it might be in denial, or it might be faith. I'm not sure which one, but I've told the Lord, I'm not going to do that. So we'll see. Okay, carry on.
But anyway, where was I?
Your daughter, you like to get up and talk to her in the mornings, and your season of life's different.
Finding a purpose.
And finding your thoughts.
Yeah. Sorry, the itchiness is distracting. The purpose part of your life is so important. There are seasons where you might have kids at home, or you might be working really hard on achieving a degree or a goal in your workplace or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's once that changes, and it will change, it will come to an end at some point.
Yeah.
I think if you're not prepared for it, you'll find yourself at loose ends, and you can get stuck there pretty easy.
Sure.
Which I think is part of where I found myself in this last season is not knowing what's now. This is luxury talking, guys. I live a very luxurious life. I realize as a stay-at-home mom,
sure, that you don't have to work to provide.
I don't have to work to provide. And so I don't really want to work, but I do want purpose in my life because I like to be home to talk to my daughter in the morning.
Right.
I like to be able to take days off and go to a kids event or something like that. So it's challenging to find purpose. This walk I'm going on really has provided purpose and direction, just like knowing that this is in front of me and walking towards that.
That is interesting. Just that the walk is providing that for you in this season. So I had my 6-month just virtual checkup with a psychiatrist yesterday, and I was it's funny because for a couple of years I've been like, I'm going to get up off this medication, and I don't know. I'm just like I told her, like she was trying to tell me how I could wean off, like, and I was just like, I feel good right now. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But we started talking through what season of life am I in right now, and I reminded her that I've read that book the book The Body Keeps the Score, and there is a part of the book that talks about when you have trauma in your life. In different seasons, your body remembers that, even if you've worked through it and you've passed it. And so April, it is a heavy month for me historically that I've just kind of come to realize recently. So April is the month I was date raped in college, and April is the month I had a stillborn baby. And it's just like the devil's just like, I'm going to take you out in April type of thing. And so last year was the first year that I realized, I think I feel low every April. And just the psychiatrist has helped me kind of like track the entirety of my life and look for patterns and things. And so we were just talking yesterday, and she said, so April's coming. So I would encourage you, what are you looking forward to the 1st of May? Should you plan a trip? Do you need a vacation? Do you need to have a girls' weekend? And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going on a trip with my friends.
Yes.
So, and I said, I didn't even plan that intentionally. And I think part of that is God's grace.
Yeah.
But the fact that like, something to look forward to when you're in a season of feeling stuck or a season of heaviness or a season of grief or what have you. Some of that you're going to learn a lot in that season, but if you don't have something to look forward to move up out of the pit of those feelings, you might get stuck.
Yeah.
And so your trip is providing that. And then you'll be in all that silence and solitude, and perhaps the Lord's going to show you what a next step is or what have you. Right now I'm just holding on, and I'm just committed to taking care of myself for April, and then first weekend in May, I'm out of here. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
But knowing that that's coming, if I have feelings come that feel low, I'm just going to keep moving. And I don't know, this podcast for us, so we're in 3rd or 4th year.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a whole season where I was just working on my health. And it's not that I don't want to continue working on my health, but in that same call yesterday, she was telling me that my diagnosis of chronic fatigue from my 20s, that the medical professionals and psychiatric professionals or whatever are kind of at odds if that's a medical diagnosis or a mental health diagnosis. And she's not positive that's a medical diagnosis, and she's concerned why I'm so tired, and what if I have sleep apnea and it's just hidden, and like maybe I'm just not getting adequate sleep and I'm just so tired because I'm not getting adequate sleep. And maybe I got off the phone and I texted Brian and told him what she said, but then also said, I'm not moving unless I feel like the Holy Spirit gives me a nudge. I'm not running back to another doctor. I'm not adding on more. I'm not going to put that pressure on myself anymore. I'm going to eat mostly healthy. I'm going to exercise 5 times a week. I've changed so much for the better. But like that season where it was like all about like, well, I've got to figure out what the counselor says, and I've got to go do this, and I've got to, I mean, our listeners that have been with us for a long time have really grown up with us, or at least watched us grow up a little,
A little.
But I'm just like, yeah, if it's sleep apnea, I'm going to ask the Lord to show me or give me a nudge to make an appointment.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to just take another recommendation and start running down a different path.
Yeah.
I'm chasing peace instead of sitting with my Heavenly Father who's full of peace. And I do think there's a lot of things that I have to do in the natural, but man, all that came from your comment of this trip has given you something to look forward to.
Yeah.
I think especially as women, I shouldn't say especially as women, I'm sure men feel this way too, but I'm positive they do. but planting, I mean, like looking at your life and planting seasons of like, I'm looking forward to this.
I think as women that it is harder to even know if you're winning.
What do you mean by that?
Because
That's a good thought.
this is going to be broad generalizations, so forgive me to all the women that work outside the home and they have a resume and they have a job and a ladder that they've climbed. I can think of many of my friends who currently have and have had very successful careers, and they are powerhouses in the workforce. But so I'm going to make a generalization here that as women, we, as a wife and a mother, I don't have milestones where I'm getting a raise or a promotion or a recognition that I have
that
achieved
you can work towards.
something.
Yeah.
So my kid graduated from high school. That doesn't mean that he is, like a fully launched, successful human being. It doesn't mean that, all right, mom gets a gold star. She managed to get that kid graduated. I mean, it's not the same as
well, you can't control
becoming vice president of your region or whatever. And I can't control the outcome of that person either. So it's very difficult to measure your life by achievements or power or success. And I think that that's where our temptation lies, is that we want to measure by the way that our house looks, the number of Instagram likes and followers that we have, the amount of money in our bank account, the way that our clothes look, whatever. We want to be able to measure ourselves by something, some standard. And usually we look to standards that the world sets that mostly we're never going to achieve. And even if we do achieve, it's fleeting. I was talking to a friend of mine.
Good.
She is 91 years old, almost in April. She will be 91 years old.
You've been hiding her from me.
She's a well-kept secret.
I hope she listens.
And anyway, I was talking to her because we got to be friends because she would send me a Christmas card and a Christmas letter. And her
She just picked you out of the phone book?
She picked me out of the church.
Okay.
Her letter is just an update on what's been happening in her family for the year. It's, her kids and grandkids and what her and her husband have been doing and, travels and plans and things they've been working on in their house and stuff like that. It's charming, but it also is full of grace. It is just every word that she writes, you can just see that she loves the Lord and has been faithful to him, and he has been faithful to her.
Yeah.
You just see it in every sentence.
Yeah.
And so I got to know her and talk to her about her life and everything. And so I started thinking about 91 is a long, long time.
It is.
And so I asked her, how did you, she feels like her letter writing, she writes cards every month, birthday cards, Valentine's Day cards, Easter cards, anniversary cards, minimum 20 cards a month.
Wow.
But then, there are holidays where she writes many more. So hundreds of cards every year. And I said, when did you start this ministry of card writing?
Right.
And she's like, I have been doing this my whole life, which when you think about it, way back when, that's how you communicated with people. So just writing cards and notes and corresponding with your friends and family. And she came to Christ a little bit later in life, I think when her kids were teens, if not adults. And she said, but I did realize the importance of writing letters. One day I was publicly called out by a woman, and I had not responded to one of her letters. And so I'm guessing she must have been at work, and a man in her life, colleague, jumped up and defended her. But she realized okay, this is really important to respond to people.
Huh.
And in that moment, chose not to be offended, ended up becoming friends with the woman, and and that's when the letter writing and card writing had become very important to her in that correspondence. So fast forward, she's in her 60s in a small group, and she's like, I just want a purpose in my life, and I don't really feel like I have any talent, and I feel like I'm not don't really have, a gift or something. And one of the women in her group was just like, your letter writing is a ministry. Like all of the encouragement that you send and the way that you correspond with people is a ministry. And that was 30 years ago. And then her husband died a year ago, and which isn't a normal part of life, but still so sad.
Sure.
Married over 60 years. And she was just like, Lord, what's happening in my life? I just want purpose. And still at 90 years old is asking the Lord, what's my purpose? And what do you have for me? It's like she's never thought, okay, it's time to retire and now I just live my life.
Yeah.
She still wants purpose. And so now in the community that she lives in, she visits the people that are shut in, that are bedridden, that can't get out because of health ailments or whatever, that she's still going on 91, is active in her community, has purpose, has something in front of her that is keeping her going. And I just am like, that is remarkable.
Yeah.
It is remarkable.
It will be fascinating, Heather, to see what the Lord may speak to you on your walk.
Yeah.
Like what if this purpose in this next season is as simple but as profound as that?
Well, I think that we often overlook the small things that we think, I've got to have something big. If it's going to matter, it better go viral on Instagram. I mean, that's the only way to measure it, right?
Yeah.
Can it not be just as simple as writing a note of encouragement to somebody and realizing the Lord is using me in this, or this is my purpose. This is what I have in front of me. I mean, it's just like it changes your perspective to, I better be doing something important or it doesn't even matter.
I feel really passionate in this particular season about people being really rooted in a local church. Because often those things that I think are God's highest calling for us, like that letter writing, we can overlook, and we need someone to come alongside and call it out in us.
Yeah.
Like the person in our small group that said, are you kidding? You're writing. To where it was an eye-opening moment. The Lord will speak to us and speak to our hearts for sure, but it's often through that confirmation of somebody walking along with you. I had one of our younger pastors at the church said something to me last week that I think was one of those moments. Super profound. We had a man in our church pass away young, 50 years old. And one of the most meaningful funerals that I've ever been to, because the Lord was lifted up and he was lifted up. And as you listened to all the stories shared, you could hear how to be rooted and planted in the same church for 30 plus years, there's 100 times you could have been offended and left. There's 100 times somebody said something to you that made you feel less than, and probably not even intentionally. But I just thought the beauty in his stick-to-itiveness, the beauty in his loyalty, the beauty of him being rooted and grounded. When he got diagnosed with cancer and then only 5 short months later passed away, the church rallying around and loving. So I've known this family for 25 plus years, but not close with them, just known them. We've all kind of worked in kids ministry together in separate areas. But the wife asked me to go to the funeral home with her and to be with her when the pastors came to plan the funeral. And That's an incredible honor to be invited to somebody's intimate moments of life. I mean, it's something you don't take lightly. And you want to steward it well and love well. And I'm sarcastic, and she knows it. And I'm strong, but I can be tender. It was what she needed in those two meetings, was somebody that could be strong. Like if somebody's pushing her too hard, say, that's enough for right now. But then to like lighten the mood and make her laugh some. And like, side note, I found out that if your loved one is cremated, you can watch the cremation if you so desire. That sounds horrific to me. So when that came up, I was like, oh my gosh, to which she's like, be quiet. This isn't about you today. And we're giggling, and the funeral director's like, I don't know what to do with these two ladies. But anyway, I was in my sweet spot in loving her well. And anyway, but this young pastor, he's our executive pastor at the location of the church that we go to. We walked out to our cars together after the funeral's planned. And he said, you know what's crazy is the service that you are volunteering with them in, we just launched exactly 1 year ago. What if the whole reason that we launched that service has nothing to do other than connecting you with this family for such a time as this?
Yeah.
And I'm sure God has bigger things than just that one little instance. But for 1 year, I've just been walking alongside this family. And you sent me a text this week of someone else I knew that was in the hospital. I just realized I'm not a hospital ministry person. I don't want to go visit people I don't know. I don't think that's specifically my calling. I would if I needed to. But if I know you, I will walk into the middle of anything for you. So I went and visited another family this week. You mentioned somebody was in the hospital, and I just realized I'm good in this setting. When it's really, really yucky and people are afraid to approach you because they don't know what to say, I will approach you. I'll walk with you. I'll do it. And I don't know if that's my purpose or not, but you telling that story just hit me just like, at least for this season, I'll continue to walk with this sweet widow now.
Yeah. I think it's, your gifts are different than mine, and I often think that your gifts are much flashier than mine. They show up in bold ways,
but they burst and they
they
flame out too.
But I don't. You have to know what you're good at, and you can't. I don't think you can discount. I think that often the lie or what you come up against in your life is that you're too much.
Sure, for sure, absolutely.
And that some other people would say you should be solemn and quiet, and you should not go in there and be making jokes during this season or whatever. But you do know that people do need to borrow your strength in those moments. They do need to borrow your confidence. They do need to borrow your pursuit of, truth and justice.
It has taken me, though, until this age to be okay, because my gifts can be flashy, to be okay with the fact that a lot of people will misunderstand them. Not the person I'm called to minister to. I'll do right by them, but that I will be misunderstood by other people. And can I be okay with that? And it's hard. I mean, I'm a big personality, but that doesn't mean I don't get my feelings hurt. I mean, it's hard. Because yes, someone somewhere, maybe even listening to this, will go, I cannot believe she cracked a joke in the funeral home. But if you talk to the widow, I was solemn when I needed to be solemn, and I lifted her up, and we laughed when she needed to laugh. But I wouldn't do the same with you in the funeral home, and I wouldn't do the same with Quinn in the funeral home. I would individualize it for each person in each season. But if you just look at me from the outside, it can be offensive, it can be too much, it can be, and it's hurtful when people think that about me. But what do? I'm too old to not use my gifts. I'm just going to go ahead and do it and not be understood by everyone.
And that's part of being in a community, is having the opportunity to use your gift.
Yeah.
That if you were if you were just living your life detached from the Lord, your gifts certainly would show up, but
they would be too much.
Probably.
But that's okay.
I mean, yeah, I can totally see you in the workplace. Just
can you
bossing
even
people
imagine?
around,
Oh my gosh!
They'd either love you or they'd hate you.
Yes, and there'd probably be a lot of hate, and me without Jesus, there would be a lot of people that would be like, "Oh my gosh, get her out of here." And even with Jesus, there's some people that want to get me out of here. Okay, it's fine. But like you're saying, living in community, like when I feel less than, or I'm too much in that situation, or I've rubbed someone the wrong way, or what have you, I do have people that can go, you're fine. You're fine. And I try to now do this as a mom with Eleanor. I was just thinking, I told you this story last week, but Eleanor to school last week wore her hair in space buns. And she's in 4th grade. And it's funny because when I was fixing her hair, I even thought, she told me not to talk about her on the podcast for a while, but
she doesn't listen anyway.
She doesn't listen. She's fine. But she wore her hair in space buns. And I thought as I fixed her hair, like it was such a tender moment to me because I thought, she's about to outgrow this. She's about to outgrow this. And I was just really relishing in the little girl hairstyle. Mm-hmm. And she was so happy. And I thought she looked so cute. And then after school, she got in the car and she was really grumpy, like to the point where I was about to discipline her. I'm just like, what in the world? You cannot treat me that way. And you go to your room and blah, blah, blah. And she said, somebody in my class said I looked like a baby with my hair like this. And I just said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then she said, and then somebody else said, your hair's really cute if you're in 2nd grade, and they're in 4th grade.
Kids are so lame.
And then I'm just like, we go to a Christian school. Who's in charge of these children? Where are their parents? Like first I'm like feeling sad for her, and then I'm like ticked. And then I'm like, I'm going to discipline their children for them because they don't know how to do it. But it's just a moment to say, you are exactly who you're supposed to be. And not everybody's going to honor that. Yeah. And you just pick who you let close. And these are kids on the periphery of her life. Who cares? Who cares? Of course she cares.
Yeah. It's hard.
It is hard. But that's Christian parenting. That's as a 47-year-old godly community saying like, you're okay like you are. Mm-hmm. Like, don't hold on to that sting. Let it go. It's like you can laugh in the funeral home. Somebody's going to be offended, but let it go in the moment it was right. And just, I don't know how you do it without godly community. I don't know how you find your purpose for your next season.
Well, you know what? You've got to know who you are. And that takes time.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of time. It's totally different perspective from being 30 and being 50.
Yeah.
But to be okay with who you are, knowing who you are, so that you're not trying to be somebody that you're not going to be. I'm not going to be you, and you're not going to be me.
Right.
But and I'm not going to be my friend who writes notes.
Yeah.
But I certainly admire and
can celebrate that.
Yeah. And can look to it as an example of being faithful. Mm-hmm. What do I have? Who am I and what do I have that I think can help propel you into the next season? I'll tell you what, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb before this.
Yeah.
Whit calls every time.
He forgets that we have a high calling in life.
He goes to voicemail for a reason, but he'll just keep calling.
Oh, my word.
Hello? I missed it. I talked too long.
My goodness. That's
funny. I was going to answer and let him have a little cameo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been thinking, so at our church, we're starting this, we have been in this season of talking about Sermon on the Mount. Mm-hmm. And the first week of the series was, the Beatitudes, blessed are these people, blessed. And
we can drop a link to that in our show notes.
We could. And so I think that those Beatitudes are interesting because you often look at them like, oh, I am this. Blessed are the merciful, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the peacemakers. And sometimes I think about those like, oh, I'm this, and I am a merciful person. And I think I'm a peacemaker. I don't remember the rest of them. But the definition for blessed that we talked about in the scriptural, what are the words I'm looking for? The scriptural definition of blessed is flourishing.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in that message and I was just like, Lord, I want to flourish.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to languish, you know. This was a month or so before my birthday. So I'm just like, I really want to flourish. I want to have purpose and meaning. And how do I bear fruit in this new season? What does that look like? What does that look like for me to flourish? Because it's going to look different for me than it is for you and for anybody else. But what does it really look like to flourish? Where I'm at right now is my marriage healthy? What does it need to be flourishing? What does it need to be bearing fruit? Relationships with my kids, relationships in my community. Yeah. Where, what is not flourishing? What's waning? What's lagging? What's languishing? But what?
Something you said that might be worth making a note of. I think when you are much younger than we are, you think that you get married and marriage is just, I don't know what you think. Well, when I fell in love, I just thought Brian hung the moon and this was going to be fun and easy.
Yeah.
And Brian had a professor, he's getting his master's, and he had a professor that said something that this professor personally does. And we were both like, that's fascinating. But every 7 years, he and his wife, not a big ceremony, not a big rigmarole, but they recommit themselves to one another, just in and of themselves. And he said, because about every 7 years, you're a different person. So, you marry one person, but you're a different person. And so I have a feeling there could be someone listening thinking like, oh my goodness, a pastor and a pastor's wife are having a low in their marriage. There's nothing wrong with your marriage.
I am a different person than I was 10 years ago.
You guys are just changing and evolving and then recommitting to that new version. Just not that anyone would think this, or maybe they would, but like there's nothing, just so everybody, there's nothing wrong in your marriage.
No.
Like there is no infidelity. There is no issues. You're just learning and growing and becoming more like Christ and changing and looking for new purpose in a new season. And with all of that growth and change and looking for a new purpose, you have to recommit to one another and say, we're still doing this together.
Yeah.
We want to be flourishing instead of just doing life together. We want to be happily married and enjoying the wife or husband of our youth. We want to make this the best it could be.
We're not just living together.
We're not just getting by. We're not just coexisting. We're not just cheering each other on at work or whatever, but we're truly committed to being one together. Yeah. And so I love hearing you say, I want to evaluate, is my marriage flourishing? And I just don't want anyone to misunderstand and think that something's going wrong. This is life. And if you're going to do life for any length of time like we have, some seasons are more fun than others.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking, I was on a walk, and we live in Oklahoma. I grew up in Oregon. And
here we go, Oregonian.
You got to hear about it. In Oregon, everything is green. In the winter, the grass is green, the trees are green. In Oklahoma, everything is brown. It's so brown.
For a long time.
It is, for 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, for a long time.
Everything is brown and beige and boring. I mean, it's...
And crunchy, like you walk on the grass.
Anyway, so I was out on a hike in the woods, and
I love how your walk started as a walk and then it was a hike in the woods.
Okay. It was definitely a hike.
Okay.
And I want to give context for where I was walking. So I'm hiking in the woods, and it is all brown. And I had determined at the beginning, I wasn't going to listen to anything. I was just going to be me in the space, listening to myself walk, listening to the sounds around me.
Yeah.
You know, are there birds? Are there animals? You know, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I smell? I'm just taking, it was a 2 to 3 hour hike. And I'm just like, I'm just going to take this time to be aware of where I'm at and where I'm going. And as I got towards the end of my walk, I started to notice this isn't all brown. I started to notice the tips of the trees had little tiny buds on them.
Yeah.
There were little signs of a little bit of green, a little bit of pink that were just about to burst out. Like, this isn't always going to be brown.
Right.
This is about to change. We are on the verge of everything becoming green and beautiful again. And that's life.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
Yes, it is.
life.
Yeah. And is this a quote or scripture or saying that it might just be a saying? It might just be a principle of life that you only can understand and experience joy to the same degree that you've understood and experienced sorrow.
Yeah.
You know, it's sometimes it's dry and brown, but just hold on, because it's going to be green and pink and blooming and beautiful
Yeah.
if you'll stay steady.
Yeah.